Как бы здесь, давайте как бы на ту сторону. Если ну, тогда вот туда. I have an idea. Since you know those people can be filled those tables. This way. Sure. This one's about me. Slow. Hey guys, friends, we're gonna take care of it. Don't worry. We're gonna push those two tables. Yes, excellent. You can sit on this side and you're on that side. Yeah.
There's another chair for Yuri. Still like to consider Yuri.
It's all right. Hi. Thank you for coming. I'll try to speak as little as possible because I'm not the featured actor. Let me introduce myself and my colleagues on this panel. For those who don't know me, my name is Misha Kochman. I'm professor of scenic and costume design here at the School of Theater, Dance, and Performance Studies. And I'm head of MFA in design. Our distinguished guest today, our featured guest, is Smekhov, who is, well, I'd rather not spend too much time listing his accomplishment and credentials. He's one of the most prominent Russian theater artists of his generation, going back, I would say, 60 years, at least. One of the most prominent members of Russia's most famous theater company, the Taganka Theater. Galina Aksionova, his wife, is a film scholar and film critic, and a professor at the Moscow Arts Theater School. To my right, stage right. Stage right is my good friend and colleague and collaborator, Yuri Urnov. He's director, and he is a professor at Towson University, and a company member at Woolly Mammoth Theater, company here in DC, down the road. There is Yuri Kardonsky. Yuri Kardonsky is a professor of directing at Yale School of Drama, and up until last year, chair of theater at Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut. He's also a longtime member of Lev Dodin's Malvi Drama Theater acting company. what I would describe as its the second generation of that acting company. Now they're going on third, right?
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah, roughly.
He is also a fantastic director. And last but not least, there's Howard Shulitz, I hope he doesn't need a lot of introduction in this room. He is the founder and the artistic director of Woolly Mammoth Theater. And he has long time, what I wouldn't describe as interest, engagement, and connection with Eastern European theater in general and Russian theater in particular. The theme of this roundtable, and I really want to run it as a roundtable. I certainly, this is as much as I want to talk, except for translating. You didn't come here to, enjoy my deeply accented voice. The title of is Russian Theater Today. And it is, for us, it's, by us, I mean us, theater community in America. Because for all purposes, I'm not a, Russian theater artist, Russian designer living in the States. I'm, American, I'm an American artist of Russian descent. And in this regard, I belong to this world rather than that one. For us, it's both a source of fascination and inspiration and curiosity. There is so much in in American theater as we know it today that owes its cadences to Russians a long time ago. And there is also this idea that some of my American friends and colleagues really carry in them that, well, Russians really know how, they treat their theater right. And I don't say glibly. It's a, to use a quote from a play that Howard and I happened to, Howard directed and I, was fortunate to design, Stupid Fucking Bird. To use Aaron Posner's quote, somewhere in Eastern Europe, or at least in the Eastern Europe of my imagination. I'll leave it at that, and I would like to start with posing a question to Benjamin Borisovich. Just technical note, I will be both moderating and translating this as much as it is needed. And when I get very tired with translating, I'll ask Yura to take over. The question, let me say the question in English first. The question is, Benjamin Borisovich, how do you? This is Millie.
Sorry.
So be quiet.
How do you as one of the most prominent theater artists of the generation of that goes back flourished in the 60s and early 70s, right? Of that, what you would describe as wave of Russian theater. How does that compare and connect with what's going on today? And were there any previous waves that it sort of connects itself with?
Thank you very much. First of all, today my English is not good. And yesterday too. Nothing about tomorrow? Not yet. Окей. Я могу говорить по-русски довольно хорошо.
I can speak Russian really well.
Есть
Translate.
Так. Ну, наверное, есть какая-то Божья милость в том, что заканчивается эпоха бывшего хорошего, ставшего плохим театрального языка, и начинается эпоха какого-то нового подъема, новой волны.
There is something good about the fact that the era, the epoch of old bad theater language seems to be winding down, and the new period, the period of new theatrical language is upon us.
Yeah, theatrical language. Yeah? Значит, нас учили ученики Станиславского,
We were taught by Stanislavski's students
что успех МХАТа в 1898 году
So we were told by those people that Moscow Arts Theater success in 1898
был прежде всего связан с тем, что закончилась эпоха очередной рутины,
was first and foremost due to the fact that the era of routine, the era, the retarded routine was over by 1898. That routine, not the one.
и актеры, которые разговаривали с пафосом, их сменила компания актеров Московского художественного общедоступного театра, где разговаривали нормальным человеческим языком.
And so the actors who used to deliver their lines, with a sense of pathos, like that, were succeeded by a company of actors who communicated in normal, casual language.
Это была революция.
That was a revolution.
И это прежде всего привлекло молодую интеллектуальную аудиторию Москвы, Петербурга и России.
And it attracted first and foremost the young intelligentsia from Moscow, Petersburg, and from all over Russia. It attracted it to theater.
Потом прошла, да, и от Станиславского, который, наверное, первым сформировал понятие режиссуры, театральной режиссуры, пошли ответвления, пошли ветви обновлений.
So what happened then from Stanislavski, who was the first, arguably, to formulate what the idea of directing a director in theater was, it started sort of, that idea is, like, how do you explain it? Started divided into branches. That family tree started to grow branches.
Ну, и строго говоря, это были, как говорили, что Станиславский это натурализатор, Мейерхольд это конструктор, да? Вахтангов это happy medium, это золотая середина.
So as they used to describe it, is that Stanislavski is a natural, is a, not naturalist, is into naturalism, right? Meyerhold is constructivist, and Vachtangoff is happy medium.
Ну, Мейерхольд это biomechanic, yeah?
Meyerhold with his biomechanics.
Это режиссерская партитура, которая включает в себя музыкальное исполнение, то есть напоминающее оперные партитуры.
It's a directing script that includes almost musical delivery, reminding you of opera, librettos.
Да. Теперь для того, чтобы не впадать для того, чтобы не явить себя невеждой в подробностях, перескочу эпоху.
Now, skipping the details, let's jump to the next era.
Next epoch. Скажем так, когда, значит, Станиславский, Мерколь, Вахтангов, эпоха после сталинских репрессий, после кошмара 30-х годов, условно говоря, рождение театра как освобождение от лжи и кошмара.
Which brings us to the era immediately after the death of Stalin and after the era of repression and the nightmare of Stalin's terror. That was the time of awakening from that nightmare, and theater was an imminent part of it.
Да, и новый пафос, назовем его так, в сталинской эпохе, сменился опять упрощением, то есть опять реабилитацией, так сказать, театральных жертв предыдущей эпохи, и явился театр опять простого человеческого действия. Эфрос, Товстоногов, Любимов. В России любят все на троих.
So the pathos of the Stalin era, second kind of pathos, but pathos nevertheless, was succeeded by the language which was more real and casual and direct, and that new generation of theater artists is represented by three names: Efros, Anatoly Efros, Yuri Lyubimov, and Georgy Topstanogov. And in Russia, everything is divided into three. Everything is usually represented by three of.
Вот прошло время, и не скажу, что это все стало рутиной, но новое поколение театральных любителей уже при открытом железном занавесе пережило 90-е скучные годы, эти условно говорю, и дальше, можно сказать, появились три тоже новых имени.
And what we are observing now is after the boring, nondescript 1990s when it comes to theater, we are seeing the kind of reawakening of Russian theater, and that is again personified in Smekhov's mind. Is represented by three people.
Новые голоса режиссуры и новый интерес – это, условно говоря, это Анатолий Васильев, это Петр Фоменко, Лев Додин.
Those three are Anatoly Vasilyev, Petr Fomenko, and Lev Dodin.
Да?
Yeah.
Вот. Не знаю, отвечаю я вам на вопрос или нет, но сегодня подоспели новые зеленые всходы.
And now we have like little green, sprouts that we are looking at right now.
Вот. Давайте их назовем так.
Let's call them.
Это Кирилл Серебренников, Константин Богомолов. Кого третий?
You need three.
Нельзя. А третьих много.
Okay. So it's first and foremost it's Kirill Serebrennikov of Moscow's Gogol Center and Konstantin Bogomolov, and there are lots of threes, like number threes.
Да, Римас Туминас, Карбаускис, Виктор Рыжаков, Шиновач, and so on.
Yeah, those are all names of potential threes.
То есть вообще появилось новое дыхание.
There is a new breath in Russian theater.
То есть старое, новое театральное счастье.
The old new theater bliss, as he describes it.
Question?
Do you guys have any comments or questions? Like I'm asking my fellow panel members.
Загадываем желание между двумя юрами.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a Eura and the Eura, so the three of us can actually have like secret wishes that will get fulfilled because it's a Russian superstition.
Yeah, I have a question really, which is that, okay, this mid-generation of Efros, Lubimov, Taganka, I mean, again, I don't know that work, I wasn't there, I wasn't ever in Russia at that period to see it, although we saw some of Lubimov's work here at Arena Stage in Washington, D.C., probably before most of your time, so I've seen some of his work. But all of them were defining themselves in reaction to or as an evolution of Stanislavski. Is that still true? And the same of Vasilyev and Dodin. Is that still true of Serebrennikov and Bogomolov and people like Krimov? Are they still identifying themselves as a derivation from Stanislavski, or have they let that go?
Do you have an opinion on this, Yuri?
I think I do. Yes, I think I think I do believe there was a moment right in between the last two waves, or as a part of two waves, specifically with the last wave, when the new at least the new generation of directors, I never heard them at least referring to this, referring to Stanislavski as to their predecessor, but it also feels like that's a different kind of technology of work on stage, and that's a different kind of technology of work with an actor. It's mostly the work. Well, let's say if we're creating this paradigm of between Stanislavski and Meyerhold, if we're from the very beginning creating this choice where, let's say, and simplifying it, Stanislavski is from inside out and Meyerhold is from outside in, then I do believe that the last generation, including Krimov, including Serebrennikov, including Bogomolov, are going this way, are going the more Meyerholdian way, are becoming much more formal, are becoming much more constructivist. That feels different and it looks different, and I think it creates different kind of meanings because of this.
I would like to apologize for all mistakes that I will do in English, but I would like just to add that Serebrennikov taught in Moscow Art Theater School, and his theater, all his actors graduated from Moscow Art Theater School, and I was one of the teachers on this course. And Bogomolov, he directed most of his performances at Moscow Art Theater. I do agree that it's very different reading of Stanislavski, that it was 100 years ago. But even Stanislavski predicts that if life change and psychology of human being change, everything will change. I would say, from my point of view, the main difference, it's union between Stanislavski and Meyerhold, past and present, East and West tradition. I would say for the first time we lived, I'm sorry, I need to use past. We lived normal life when Russia was open country, and we were allowed to get information from the third hands, from foreign great experience. For example, we couldn't understand Serebrennikov without Heiner Müller tradition in Germany. He's very close to German tradition. At the same time, if you go to his Google Center, you will see portrait of Vasilyev, Lubimov, Stanislavski, Vakhtangov. Okay, I will be back. If you go to Taganka Theater in 1960s, there were 4 portraits. It was portrait of Stanislavski, Meyerhold, Vakhtangov, and Brecht. So in Russia, we have long memory, and we love relatives. So the third generation, they had more relatives than all Russian generation before them. That's the most interesting from my point of view. Also, we had really very boring 1990s. We were talking today that It was a joke. There is 3 sisters on the stage and 1 Uncle Vanya in audience. There were empty houses. You know, people living around 9 o'clock because they were afraid to walk in on streets during the night. It was criminal situation. Started from 2000, everything changed. Now, I would say, I try to travel as much as I can. I try to see performances all around the world. And I would say that Russia is one of the most interesting countries from theater point of view. Our problem is our language, that we are not understood as English countries. But in Moscow Theater School, when I work, and I'm working with American students, we have exchange with Harvard, we have exchange with O'Neill, and they coming to study, but at the same time our teacher learn from their experience. Since we have this exchange program for about 20 years, you can understand how important it is. Also, we had a lot of great theater festivals, and that's another very important thing. That was the land from new generation to be born, to grow up, to study. In 1990s, the International Chekhov's Festival started. The best theater from all around the world were brought to Moscow. Then Erik Bayakov, the great manager, he invented Gold Mask Festival, and he started to bring provincial theaters with their interesting performances to Moscow. It was another way to learn. Then Net Theater with Young Experiment Theater. So these festivals that were born in 1990s, they helped new generation of directors. They are in their 40s now, and they worked a lot with technology. And no doubt that Meyerhold is important as Stanislavski is, but it's happened that recent chair leader of Moscow Art Theater, Oleg Tabakov, he was more open in less concerned about being only on Stanislavski's shoes. And he invited directors, actors, teachers from all around the world. He opened this program in Pittsburgh and then in Harvard. And that's he responsible for this very cosmopolitan generation that we had. I'm sorry, I'm using past, and this is very important, that we had until today. Last 2 years, we are in very complicated situation. It's hard to say where we'll go.
Thank you.
Перевести.
I'll ask a question in Russian first, then translate it. Я просто хочу, как бы, follow-up, я хочу спросить у Юры Кордонского, как бы, вопрос Хауарда об отношении, как бы, между, как бы, Станиславским, да, и вот этими, вот, как бы, мэтрами, ну, как бы, я бы их назвал, мэтрами 70-х годов, да, то есть Додин, Васильев и так далее. И, как бы, Юра, как человек, являющийся, как бы, ну, так сказать, веткой, растущей, как бы, из додинского дерева, вот как с этим обстояло дело у Додина? Let me translate. So, I'm going to follow up on Howard's question about the relationship between Stanislavski, like as that, you know, right, that portrait of a relative that we all carry with us, right? And Nabokov has the great metaphor for it about in Dar, you know, the gift about people escaping during a flood, and someone's carrying a portrait of a relative, and no one remembers why is this portrait. Question for Yuri, Yuri Kardonsky, who was a long-time member of Lev Dodin's company. What from like close quarters, what's the relationship between Dodin, one of the masters of Russian theater of 1970s and 1980s, and Stanislavski? Like, what was that like?
Well, we also had a lot of portraits in the lobby of the theater, that was much more open time. I think it was much more open time. So that was boring 90s, but at the same time, as Galina said, the seeds of some openness and some new forms that were probably well known in the West before started slowly getting in. You know, like you open the windows and the draft starts cleaning the air. So we had portraits of Peter Brook, in addition to Brecht and Stanislavski and Meyerhold and Vakhtangov. And I cannot tell you how many times my mentor, Lev Dodin, told us this story. I will tell it just once. That his teacher on one side, I don't know, paternal, maternal, whatever, was Boris, who was the direct student of Stanislavski, and his teacher on the other side was Matvey Dubrovin, who was the direct student of Meyerhold. Therefore, Dodin considered himself a grandson of these two. So kind of a beautiful heritage, if you think of that. And so he used to hold us to a very high standard by saying, you are grandchildren of these two titans, so you better do well in my class. No pressure, right? No pressure. But you know, to go a little on a more general note on that, and I think that was quite common, probably for all three, Dodin, Vasiliev, and Fomenko, that Stanislavski continued to remain the most important point of reference for all of them, no matter how far they would deviate into experimentation. Which is interesting, which is in a way what Benjamin Borisovich said, that after Stalin's era, with socialist realism, with completely strangely glamorous stories about peasants and factory workers, the 1960s, when Taganka and Savremennik, Anatoly Efros, there was a feeling of cleansing, of return to the art of Stanislavski, Meyerhold, Vakhtangov. There was the feeling of removing lies and digging again the truth in that. And then we had Brezhnev, and after that in 1990s, again, the feeling of cleansing, getting away with lies and going back to truth, no matter what forms it takes, again was in a way the drive behind the new directing wave. And I have a feeling, I have to admit, I don't visit Russia very often, unfortunately, so I don't know contemporary Russian theater that well. Of course, I know of Kirill Serebrennikov and Bogomolov, and I would like to add Yuri Butusov in the mix, and Andrei Moguchi, all coming from St. Petersburg school. And as Galina said, that time, 2000s, were much more open. That was actually the first time when Iron Curtain went up. And Russian theater was flooded by the sense of everything goes, everything is possible. But at the same time, all these young artists, they were educated in the schools that are deeply rooted in the traditions of Stanislavski and Meyerhold and Vakhtangov. They're actors who are willing now to experiment wildly and to go anywhere with them and do a lot of crazy stuff. They still get a very deep, very long, very exhausting, sometimes very hateful education, 24/7 for years and years and years. And I think part of the success, I would argue that part of the success of this new wave of directors is based on the fact that actors they work with are still educated in the deep, clean traditions of these great people. Like Yura Butusa, when he was just starting in St. Petersburg, he worked a lot with his classmates. So at the beginning, Waiting for Godot and Wojciech, it was all with, yeah, like we went to school, it was almost the same period. And Waiting for Godot was a beautiful and very courageous production. But the actors who played that, they were willing and able to dive into the truth of every single moment in that very absurdist and very avant-garde. And I think the mix of that still creates the best theater in Russia.
Just to give everybody here a concrete example of what Yuri's talking about, Misha and Yuri, we could talk about Scumbags, Serebrennikov's very famous production. So this is one of this new crop of remarkable directors who took over the Gogol Center in Moscow. So this was a sleepy old theater. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm no expert. I've only been to Moscow twice. But it was a sleepy old theater that nobody was attending. And the cultural minister of Moscow decided to get rid of the old regime and to appoint this firebrand young director, Kirill Serebrennikov, to take over the Gogol Center. Not only did they actually dismantle the architecture of the building, which had a lot of architectural frou-frou, they just pulled all the frou-frou off the old building, stripped it down to like plywood. The balconies are just covered with plywood. Hired a bunch of young artists to make a kind of white installation out of the lobby, so that you feel like you're coming into a space of art. And immediately, I think very quickly, started to attract a lot of young audience members. And then the famous first production, which several of us have seen, was called Scumbags. Just to give you a sense of how the tradition of training connects with what happens in the theaters. So this was his first show at this theater. He invited his students, who he had taught at the Moscow Art Theater, several of them to come with him and be part of his first company. So they were all still in their mid to later 20s, I believe. And they had this remarkable training both in the kind of realistic Stanislavski tradition and in this, almost biomechanic tradition. And so this show, Scumbag, was an adaptation of a book about the wave of protest movements going on among young folks in Russia in the 90s or early 2000s? Early 2000s. And the piece was staged on a virtually bare stage. And the set consisted of police barricades, these kind of metal police barricades that they have the same ones in Russia that we have here. All of the staging was moving around of those barricades, jumping over them. I mean, the most physicalized work that you can imagine. When I'm watching it, I'm going, we wouldn't even ask actors in the United States to do this stuff. The union would come down on our heads. They would think that we were, killing the actors. But it was remarkably physical work, and at the same time, the story was a very realistic, painstakingly kind of detailed story with what we would consider very realistic, committed, emotional acting that told the story of this group of people who were protesting on the streets against what was going on in the regime and the pushback that they were getting from the KGB. So almost in a sort of documentary style of realism, and then interspersed with songs and music and other elements. I'm trying to do justice to what I think was an important production that I think illustrates how, all of this tradition comes together in this new form, in this current wave of theater in Russia, which is very, very exciting.
Yes, I also remember when we walked into the lobby of the Gogol Center for the first time. When I said to you, I said, "Look, this is Harvey. I mean Harvey at BAM."
Yeah.
If any of you have been and Serebrennikov and people who were setting up that theater, that building, were very well aware of that. So it's also, Russian, tradition aside, it doesn't come out of nowhere. Those people are very keen observers of what is relevant in theater elsewhere.
May I add a little bit? I would like to continue what Yuri said. He mentioned one of the most important words for Stanislavski as well for the young generation of actors, the word truth. and it was also work for 60s, the search for truth. And I would like to give you an example. It's a course that graduated this summer, and now they're theater. It's course Brusnikin, Dmitry Brusnikin, the master. We said a master, the person who has the course. This person usually teach, and he's like mentor. There are a lot of different teachers who also work with the students, but there is one main person. And when they graduated, when they studied first year, they made performance. It's also me. They were 17, 18 years old. It was verbatim. Verbatim became very popular in Russia during the last 10 years. You say verbatim, yeah? That's verbatim. So they wanted to make a portrait of Moscow. All students went all around the Moscow collecting types. Young, old, people who were born in Moscow or came from abroad, homosexual, lesbian, straight, poor, rich. And they filmed them, and then they imitated these types. But they imitated not like 20 minutes interview, but they wanted to show them in 3-4 minutes, very, very brief, like not caricature. It was done very realistically, but very briefly. And they made performance like that. They performed it in a room smaller than this one. It was their exam. I remember we were sitting watching them, their energy, their truthful portrayal of these people. At the very end, they performed the very famous song of early 1990s. Victor Tsoi, maybe people who came from Russia, they know the name. His song, I Dream About Changes. But they felt that they are living a little bit different time. Political changes, it's not so open, it was just recently. So they decided to perform this song with silent language. So it was strong energy of music, it was strong energy of singer. Как сказать, что эта музыка шла она исполнялась.
It was,
Recorded. It was recorded.
yeah.
But they